I was buttoning my jacket, ready to head to my son Jeffrey's house for our weekly dinner, when my phone buzzed. A text from Warren, my lawyer. Call me. Do not step into his house. My hands trembled as I dialed. Warren's voice shook. Frederick, I found forged documents. Jeffrey's planning to take everything from you. Your savings, your home. He forwarded images, showing Jeffrey's signature on papers, declaring me mentally incompetent. Looking at my car keys, I realized our family dinner was a trap. After that call, I collapsed into my living room armchair. The same one Martha and I had picked out 20 years ago. I could almost hear her voice. Steady now, Frederick. Think clearly. Martha had been gone 3 years, taken by cancer that spread faster than any of us expected. Since then, I had been managing alone in our 2-story colonial on Maple Street, the home where we had raised our children. At 67, I had thought my biggest concerns would be maintaining my garden and enjoying retirement after 4 decades building my construction company from nothing. The business had done well. Well enough that I could leave Jeffrey and Patricia each a comfortable inheritance someday. Though Patricia, my daughter, had made her own successful life 3,000 miles away in Seattle. Jeffrey had always been different. At 42, he still struggled financially, jumping between jobs at accounting firms, never quite finding stability. After several failed business ventures that I had helped finance, I finally stopped writing checks 2 years ago. He needs to stand on his own feet, Martha had advised before she passed. I should have listened sooner. The weekly dinners had been Jeffrey's idea, starting about 3 months ago. We should spend more time together, Dad, he had insisted. Life's too short. I had been touched by this apparent change of heart, this attempt to rebuild our relationship that had frayed after his mother died. I have all the documents here, Frederick, Warren continued on the phone, his normally composed legal tone cracking with concern. Jeffrey consulted with an attorney about having you declared incompetent. He's prepared a fraudulent power of attorney. He's planning to take control of everything. That can't be right, I protested, though the images on my phone showed otherwise. How did you even find this out? Pure luck. My paralegal's brother works at the law firm, Jeffrey approached. He recognized your name when he saw the paperwork and alerted her. They're not going through with it, by the way. The firm wants nothing to do with this scheme, once they realized what was happening. I stared at the family photos on my mantle. Jeffrey at his high school graduation. Jeffrey at his wedding to Diane before their divorce. Jeffrey and me fishing at Lake Henderson when he was just 10 years old. There's more, Warren said, his voice dropping. I had my investigator check further. We have bank surveillance footage showing Jeffrey attempting to access your safe deposit box last week. He claimed he had your permission. My stomach twisted into knots. My will is in there. And Martha's jewelry that I'm saving for Patricia. Frederick. I also learned that Jeffrey was fired from his accounting job 3 weeks ago. Financial irregularities were cited. That explained his sudden availability for weekly dinners. All these months I thought we were reconnecting as father and son. Instead, he had been setting his trap, studying my routines, gaining my trust, preparing to take everything I had worked for. My phone rang again. Jeffrey's name flashed on the screen. Hello? I answered, fighting to keep my voice normal. Dad, just checking you're still coming for dinner at 6. I'm making your favorite pot roast. Don't forget to bring those insurance papers we talked about. Insurance papers. He'd mentioned something last week about reviewing my policies. Another piece falling into place. I'll be there, I promised, my free hand clenching into a fist. Great. Looking forward to it, Jeffrey replied, his voice cheerful. Too cheerful. After hanging up, I called Warren back. I'm going to that dinner. Frederick, that's not safe. Let me handle this legally. No, I said firmly. I need to know exactly what he's planning and who else is involved. I'll pretend I don't know anything. But first, I need to understand how deep this goes. Within the hour, I was sitting across from Harold Peters in a coffee shop downtown. Harold and I went back 30 years. Our kids had grown up together, and he had worked at the same accounting firm as Jeffrey until his retirement last year. He still kept in touch with his former colleagues. I hate being the one to tell you this, Frederick, Harold said, stirring his black coffee absently. His weathered face showed every bit of his 70 years as he avoided my gaze. Jeffrey's been in trouble for months. Gambling debts, from what I hear. Started with sports betting, graduated to poker, and casino games. Gambling? The word felt foreign associated with my son. How bad? Harold grimaced. Bad enough that he was skimming from client accounts. The firm caught it during an audit. They gave him a choice: resign quietly or face charges. That was 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks. Right when the dinner invitations began. Why didn't you tell me? He swore he was getting help, Frederick. Said he was going to come clean with you himself. Harold shook his head. I should have known better. After leaving Harold, I drove straight to First National Bank, where I'd been a customer since opening my business in the 80s. Susan Johnson, the branch manager, had handled my business accounts for years. Mr. Alderman, I'm so glad you came in person, she said, closing her office door behind me. We've had several concerning incidents I wanted to discuss. She turned her computer monitor toward me. In the past month, we've received 3 email requests to change your account access protocols, all supposedly from you. The language and signature matched your style, but something felt off about the requests. My blood ran cold as I read the emails. They were well crafted, using phrases I might use, mentioning details only someone close would know. We also had someone call claiming to be you, asking for your account balances and attempting to change your password over the phone. When we insisted on in-person verification, they never showed up. The caller ID? I asked, already guessing the answer. Came up as your home phone number, she confirmed. But when we called back to verify, you said you hadn't called us. I didn't recall that conversation at all. When was this call? She checked her notes. Tuesday, 2 weeks ago, around 2 in the afternoon. I had been at my doctor's appointment that afternoon. Jeffrey had offered to check on my house while I was out. He had a key. He had access to my home phone. I spent the next hour locking down my accounts, changing passwords, and adding extra verification steps. By the time I left, my retirement accounts and savings were secured with new protocols that would require in-person verification for any changes. On the drive home, I called my home security company. The system I had installed after Martha died allowed remote monitoring through an app. Mr. Alderman, according to our records, your system was deactivated multiple times in recent weeks, each time using your master code. I only gave that code to 2 people. Patricia, who lived across the country, and Jeffrey. Can you tell me when exactly? The most recent was last Tuesday, between 2:15 and 4:30 p.m. Again, during my doctor's appointment. With growing unease, I made one more call. I hadn't spoken to Diane, Jeffrey's ex-wife, since their divorce 5 years ago. She answered on the 4th ring. Frederick? Is everything okay? Not really, Diane. I need to ask you something about Jeffrey. A long silence followed. This is about the money, isn't it? What money? Her sigh traveled through the phone. He came to me last month asking for a loan. $30,000. Said he was in trouble with some serious people. When I refused, he mentioned your house. Said once you were in a facility, he'd sell it and pay everyone back. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. Did he say anything else? He texted me last week, actually. Said he had a plan to solve all his problems. That soon he'd have access to enough money to clear his debts and start fresh. Diane, would you forward me those texts? Already sending them. And Frederick? Be careful. He's not the man we thought we knew. By the time I arrived home, Diane's forwarded messages showed the extent of Jeffrey's desperation. In one text to her, he wrote, Dad's getting old anyway. He doesn't need all that money, and the house is too big for him. Once I get power of attorney, I can make better decisions for everyone. With shaking hands, I went to my home office. The filing cabinet where I kept important documents showed subtle signs of tampering. Inside, papers were slightly rearranged. My recent bank statements were missing. My will had been moved from its folder. As I searched further, I found my passport had been photographed and placed back slightly askew. My medical records folder had been rifled through, with certain pages showing fingerprint smudges. In my bedroom, I noticed small changes. A prescription bottle moved from the bathroom cabinet to my nightstand. Books rearranged haphazardly on my shelves. A half-empty whiskey glass I didn't remember pouring by my bed. Jeffrey hadn't just been planning to steal my assets. He had been carefully constructing the image of a confused old man who couldn't take care of himself. Each helpful visit had been an opportunity to plant more evidence of my supposed decline. I sat on the edge of my bed, the weight of betrayal crushing my chest. My own son, my flesh and blood, had been systematically working to destroy my life for his gain. The boy I had taught to ride a bike, the teenager I had consoled through his first heartbreak, the young man I had helped through college. Now, a stranger plotting against me. I allowed myself exactly 5 minutes to feel the pain. Then I dried my eyes and began documenting everything. The next morning, Warren arrived at my house with a thick folder under his arm and a grim expression on his face. We need to talk about Dr. Lawrence Phillips, he said, without preamble, as I led him to my kitchen table. Who? A psychiatrist Jeffrey hired. I found email correspondence. Warren slid several printed pages across to me. Jeffrey arranged for this doctor to evaluate you, supposedly for memory issues. I scanned the emails, my confusion growing. I've never met any Dr. Phillips. That lunch at Riverside Grill 3 weeks ago, when Jeffrey brought his colleague along, the memory clicked into place. A quiet, observant man who had asked me numerous questions about my daily routine, whether I still drove, if I had trouble remembering appointments. I had thought nothing of the conversation at the time. He was evaluating me without my knowledge or consent? Is that even legal? It's extremely unethical, Warren confirmed. And we've got bigger problems. Jeffrey has been telling family members you're showing signs of dementia. My cousin George had called last week, unusually concerned about how I was holding up. My nephew Thomas had suddenly invited me to coffee after years of minimal contact. Even my old friend Bill had made an awkward reference to memory clinics doing wonderful work these days. We need to establish your competency officially, Warren advised. I've arranged an appointment with Dr. Harriet Coleman this afternoon. She's the best geriatric specialist in the state. 3 hours later, I completed the most comprehensive cognitive evaluation of my life. Memory tests, problem-solving exercises, perception challenges. Dr. Coleman's conclusion was unequivocal. Mr. Alderman, your cognitive function is exceptional for any age. There's absolutely no indication of dementia or any other cognitive impairment. She provided official documentation of her findings, which Warren immediately added to our growing file of evidence. As we left her office, Warren's phone rang. After a brief conversation, his expression darkened further. That was my investigator. Jeffrey contacted your neighbor Richard yesterday, expressing concerns about you living alone. He also spoke with a realtor about helping his father downsize from a house that had become too much to manage. The betrayal kept expanding in scope. While processing this latest information, my own phone rang. Patricia. Dad, I need to tell you something about Jeffrey, she said without greeting. He's trying to declare me incompetent and take everything, I replied flatly. A moment of stunned silence. You know? I found out yesterday. How did you know? He called me last week, Dad. Said you were having episodes, forgetting things, becoming unsafe alone. He wanted my support for getting guardianship. He offered me 20% of your estate if I helped convince you to accept his assistance. I gripped the phone tighter. And I recorded the entire conversation. You old bear, Patricia said, her voice hardening. Nobody's going to railroad my father. I'm on a flight tomorrow. We'll handle this together. For the first time since Warren's text, I felt a glimmer of hope. Patricia had always been the practical one, the fighter. While Jeffrey had inherited my creativity, Patricia got my determination and Martha's sharp intelligence. I gripped the phone tighter. And I recorded the entire conversation. You old bear, Patricia said, her voice hardening. Nobody's going to railroad my father. I'm on a flight tomorrow. We'll handle this together. Warren, Patricia and I spoke for an hour, developing a comprehensive counterplan. We agreed that I would attend the dinner as planned, wearing a recording device Warren would provide. Patricia would arrive in town secretly and stay at a hotel, ready to serve as a witness if needed. Warren would prepare emergency legal documents to protect my assets if Jeffrey attempted to move forward with his scheme. That evening, I sat alone in my living room, practicing looking slightly confused. If Jeffrey wanted a vulnerable father, I would give him one, just enough to draw out the full extent of his plan. The next morning, I met with Warren again to finalize preparations for the evening's confrontation. He had brought paperwork for me to sign, updating my will and establishing an irrevocable trust that would protect my assets, even if someone managed to declare me incompetent. We're not taking any chances, he explained as I signed the documents. Even if the worst happens, your property and savings will be secure. Patricia called from the airport. Just landed. I'll be at the Grand Hotel by 2. Remember, Dad, no matter what happens tonight, we've got your back. I spent the afternoon preparing. I gathered financial documents, deliberately choosing older statements that wouldn't reveal my recent security measures. I created a fake password list, including bank accounts and investment portfolios. If Jeffrey was setting a trap, I was baiting one of my own. At 4:30, my phone rang. Jeffrey. Just checking you're still coming, Dad. 6 o'clock sharp, right? Wouldn't miss it, son, I replied, injecting warmth into my voice. Great. Oh, and don't forget those insurance papers and retirement account statements we talked about. I have a friend coming who's great with financial planning. A friend? This was new. Just someone who can give you advice about estate planning, looking out for your future." "How thoughtful," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "I'll bring everything." "Perfect. See you soon, Dad." As I prepared to leave, I took a final look around my home. The house Martha and I had shared for 38 years. The garden she had lovingly tended. The kitchen where we danced on our 40th anniversary, just months before her diagnosis. The staircase marked with pencil lines tracking our children's growth. I thought about my son as a boy, eager to help me with projects around the house. Jeffrey at 12, proudly showing off his science fair ribbon. At 18, heading off to college with dreams of becoming a financial advisor. At 30, standing beside Diane at their wedding, full of hope for their future. Where had that son gone? When had money become more important than family? Was it my fault somehow? Had I failed him as a father? I pushed these thoughts aside. Tonight wasn't about the past. It was about protecting my future and, perhaps, saving Jeffrey from himself. Warren had provided a small recording device that looked like a normal pen. I placed it in my shirt pocket and tested it one final time. I also had my phone set to record the entire evening as backup. Harold had agreed to arrive midway through dinner as additional support. "Just text me when you want me to show up," he had promised. I'll say I was in the neighborhood. As I drove toward Jeffrey's house, located in a modest subdivision across town, I rehearsed my approach, appear slightly confused at times, ask him to repeat things occasionally, mention minor memory lapses, give him enough rope to reveal his full intentions. I arrived early, parking a block away to observe the house before entering. 2 unfamiliar cars sat in Jeffrey's driveway alongside his blue sedan. Through the front window, I could see Jeffrey talking intensely with 2 men in the living room. One, older with gray hair and glasses, nodded seriously. The other, younger with a nervous energy, kept checking his watch. I moved closer, staying hidden behind a neighbor's hedge. The window was cracked open against the warm evening air. "Just get him to sign everything tonight," Jeffrey was saying. "I've already told everyone he's been slipping. Once we have the papers, we move quickly. The house goes on the market next week." "And if he refuses?" asked the older man. "He won't. Dad trusts me. He's lonely and confused. Besides, we have the doctor's preliminary assessment. This is for his own good." "And our payment?" asked the younger man. "You'll get your cut when it's done. 30% as agreed." I felt physically ill. This wasn't just Jeffrey acting alone in desperation. This was a calculated conspiracy involving multiple people. They weren't just after my money. They planned to sell my home and place me somewhere against my will. I retreated to my car and called Warren. There are at least 2 other people involved. They're planning to have me sign papers tonight and move quickly afterward. I felt physically ill. This wasn't just Jeffrey acting alone in desperation. This was a calculated conspiracy involving multiple people. They weren't just after my money. They planned to sell my home and place me somewhere against my will. "Don't go in, Frederick. We can handle this legally." I ended the call and took several deep breaths. The pain of betrayal was giving way to something else now. Determination, even anger. This was my life they were playing with. My home, my legacy. And I wasn't going down without a fight. I texted Harold, "Come at 7, bring the documents from Warren." Then I started my car and drove the short distance to my son's house, parking directly in front. I checked the recording devices one last time, straightened my jacket, and prepared to walk into the trap with my eyes wide open. "Dad!" Jeffrey exclaimed as he opened the front door, his smile broad and welcoming. He embraced me with unusual enthusiasm, clapping my back firmly. "So glad you could make it. Come in, come in." I allowed myself to be ushered into the house, noting how Jeffrey took my elbow as if I needed assistance walking. Inside, the 2 men I had observed earlier stood waiting. The older man extended his hand first. "Mr. Alderman, pleasure to meet you. I'm Dr. Lawrence Phillips. Your son has told me so much about you." So this was the psychiatrist who had evaluated me without consent. I shook his hand limply, playing my part. "This is Frank Donovan," Jeffrey indicated the younger man. "He's a notary public who helps with financial documentation." Frank nodded, his eyes not quite meeting mine. "Good to meet you, sir." "Jeffrey mentioned a financial advisor," I said, feigning confusion. "That would be me," Dr. Phillips smoothly interjected. "I advise on elder financial security alongside my medical practice." Elder financial security. The euphemism almost made me laugh. "Well, dinner's ready," Jeffrey announced. "Let's eat first. Then we can discuss business afterward." He led us to the dining room where the table was set with his best dishes, a bottle of expensive scotch prominently displayed. "Your favorite, Dad," Jeffrey said, pouring me a generous glass. "I noticed no one else received alcohol. Remember how we used to have a glass when we discussed important decisions? We had never had such a tradition." The scotch was clearly meant to further impair a supposedly already confused old man. "Thank you, son," I said, accepting the glass but only pretending to sip from it. Throughout dinner, the conversation followed a disturbing pattern. Dr. Phillips asked seemingly casual questions designed to test mental capacity. "How did you get here tonight, Mr. Alderman? Do you still drive yourself everywhere? That must be challenging in today's traffic." Jeffrey repeatedly referenced events that had never happened. "Remember last month when you left the stove on all night? Thank goodness I stopped by the next morning." Frank remained mostly silent, observing and occasionally making notes in a small notebook. I played along, appearing mildly disoriented at times, agreeing vaguely to their fictional accounts of my episodes. "The other day you called me at 3 in the morning, confused about what day it was," Jeffrey said, giving Dr. Phillips a meaningful look. "That's been happening more frequently." "Has it?" I asked innocently. "I don't recall." "That's part of the problem, Dad," Jeffrey replied, his voice dripping with false concern. He placed his hand over mine. "You don't remember these episodes." After dinner, Jeffrey suggested we move to the living room. "Frank, would you bring the papers from my office? The ones we discussed." As Frank left the room, I excused myself to use the bathroom. Once alone, I took a moment to gather my thoughts and check that the recording devices were still functioning. In the mirror, I saw a man I barely recognized. The pain and betrayal had etched new lines on my face overnight, but behind the hurt, I saw something else. Resolve. When I returned, Frank had laid out several documents on the coffee table. Jeffrey patted the seat beside him on the sofa. "Dad, we've been talking about your situation. With Mom gone and you alone in that big house, we're concerned about your well-being. These are difficult conversations," Dr. Phillips added, with practiced sympathy, "but necessary ones." "What kind of conversations?" I asked, glancing at the papers before me. "These are difficult conversations," Dr. Phillips added, with practiced sympathy, "but necessary ones." I peered at the document, deliberately squinting as if struggling to read it. "Power of attorney? But I can manage my own affairs." "About the future, Dad. About making sure you're taken care of properly." Jeffrey slid the top document toward me. "This is just a power of attorney. It gives me the ability to help manage your finances and healthcare decisions when things become difficult for you." "Of course you can, right now," Jeffrey soothed. "This is just a precaution. Remember how you asked me to help with all this last month? There's also this," Jeffrey continued, presenting another document. "This authorizes the sale of your house. We've found a wonderful assisted living facility just 20 minutes from here. Much easier to manage than that big old house with all those stairs." Frank held up his notary stamp. "Once you sign, I can notarize everything right away. Make it all official." "You know, I think I'd like to read these over carefully first," I said, gathering the papers. "Could I use your office for a few minutes, Jeffrey? My eyes aren't what they used to be. I need good light." Jeffrey hesitated, then nodded. "Of course, Dad. Take your time." In the privacy of his office, I quickly photographed each document with my phone, noting how they referenced Dr. Phillips' evaluation of my declining cognitive abilities, and included language about significant memory impairment and inability to manage financial affairs. When I returned to the living room, my demeanor had changed. No more pretending. I sat up straight and looked directly at my son. "Jeffrey, I have a question. When exactly did I agree to sell my home and move into a facility?" He blinked rapidly. "Last month, Dad. We discussed it when you had that fall." "I never fell. I haven't fallen once since your mother died." I kept my voice steady, "and I certainly never agreed to sell the home your mother and I built together." Jeffrey exchanged glances with Dr. Phillips. "Dad, this is exactly what we're concerned about. These memory lapses are becoming more frequent." At that moment, the doorbell rang. Jeffrey frowned. Who could that be? When he opened the door, Harold stood there with Patricia beside him. Jeffrey's face drained of color. "Patricia? What are you doing here? You're supposed to be in Seattle." "Hello, brother," she said coolly, stepping inside. "Surprise, Mr. Donovan," Harold nodded to Frank. "Interesting to see you here. Still notarizing questionable documents?" Frank shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact. I stood up, abandoning all pretense of confusion. "The game is over, Jeffrey. I know everything. Dad, I don't know what you think is happening here, but we're just trying to help you. Jeffrey attempted, his voice rising slightly. Help me? I laid the documents on the table. By forging my signature on bank documents? By trying to access my safe deposit box? By planting evidence around my house to make it look like I can't take care of myself? Jeffrey's face flushed. You're confused. This is exactly what I've been talking about. I took out my phone and played a recording of Jeffrey's earlier conversation. Just get him to sign everything tonight. The house goes on the market next week. His eyes widened in panic. You were spying on me? And you've been gaslighting me for months, I countered. Planning to have me declared incompetent so you could take everything I've worked for. Mr. Alderman, Dr. Phillips interjected, your son is genuinely concerned about your welfare. These paranoid accusations only confirm our worries about your condition. Patricia stepped forward, tablet in hand. Dr. Phillips, is it standard practice to diagnose someone during a lunch where they don't know they're being evaluated? Is it ethical to conspire with a family member to seize assets? The medical board might have questions about that. The doorbell rang again. This time, Warren stood there with a court officer. Warren Matthews, attorney for Frederick Alderman, he announced formally. I have emergency injunctions preventing any transfer of my client's assets and restraining orders against all parties involved in this fraudulent scheme. Jeffrey's facade finally cracked. Dad, you don't understand. I'm in trouble. I need help. By stealing from me? By planning to put me away somewhere against my will? The hurt I'd been containing broke through. I'm your father, Jeffrey. If you needed help, you could have asked. I tried. 2 years ago, when my business failed, you said no more bailouts. There's a difference between enabling bad decisions and helping someone in genuine need, I said quietly. As Warren served papers to a stunned Dr. Phillips and a visibly nervous Frank, Jeffrey made a desperate lunge for the door. Harold blocked his path. It's over, Jeffrey, I said. All of it. The accounts are secured. The house is protected. Your plan failed. You don't understand. Jeffrey's voice cracked. I owe people. Dangerous people. $300,000. They've threatened me. So your solution was to steal from me? To destroy my life to save yours? Jeffrey collapsed onto the sofa, his head in his hands. I didn't see another way out. As I looked at my broken son, I felt no triumph, only sadness. What had happened to the boy I raised? What had I missed that led him to this desperate act of betrayal? Dr. Phillips, Mr. Donovan, I suggest you cooperate fully with the authorities, Warren advised. Fraudulent competency claims, conspiracy to commit elder abuse, and attempted financial exploitation are serious charges. Frank Donovan's nerve broke first. I was just hired to notarize the documents, he blurted. Jeffrey paid me $5,000 to validate whatever he put in front of me. He said his father was dangerous to himself. That's a lie, Jeffrey protested. Is it? Frank challenged. You told me he was setting fires, wandering at night. You showed me manufactured evidence. As the two men turned on each other, Jeffrey's phone rang. He glanced at it, his face draining of color again before rejecting the call. Who was that? I asked. No one, he said too quickly. The phone immediately rang again. This time, Patricia grabbed it before Jeffrey could react. She answered on speakerphone. Jeffrey, they're at my apartment. A young woman's panicked voice came through. The men you owe money to. They're threatening to break down the door. They say time's up. My blood ran cold as I realized the danger was even more immediate than I had imagined. Jeffrey wasn't just a betrayer. He was a desperate man running from threats I hadn't even considered. Who was that? I demanded as Patricia ended the call. Amanda, my girlfriend. Jeffrey's voice was hollow. They found her. The loan sharks you owe money to? He nodded miserably. Warren immediately called the police, reporting the threat at Amanda's address. I sank into a chair, trying to process this new dimension. My son hadn't just betrayed me for greed. He was desperate, trapped, trying to save himself from very real danger. It didn't excuse what he'd done, but it shifted my understanding of his actions. How deep are you in, Jeffrey? I asked quietly. $312,000, he admitted. It started small. Sports betting, then poker to try to win it back, then loans to cover those losses. The interest kept compounding. 12% weekly. Weekly, Patricia gasped. That's criminal. That's the point, Jeffrey said. These aren't bank loans. Dr. Phillips had retreated to a corner, visibly uncomfortable with this new criminal element. Frank Donovan kept glancing at the door, clearly calculating his escape. Warren returned from his call. Police are on their way to the girlfriend's apartment. They want a statement from you, Jeffrey, about these threats. I can't talk to the police, Jeffrey protested. These people have connections. They'll kill me. They're going to hurt you anyway if you don't pay, Patricia pointed out. And your brilliant plan to steal Dad's money just failed spectacularly. While this intense family drama unfolded, Frank Donovan made his move, slipping toward the door. Harold stepped in his path once more. I don't think so, Harold said firmly. You're part of a conspiracy to commit elder fraud. You're staying right here until the authorities arrive. Look, I was just hired to notarize documents, Frank protested. I didn't know the full story. You knew enough to demand 30%, I reminded him, referencing the conversation I'd overheard. Frank's expression shifted from defensive to calculating. I have information, he offered, about Jeffrey's gambling operation, about who he owes money to. Would that be worth something to you? Jeffrey lunged at Frank. You backstabbing piece of... Harold and Warren restrained him, while Patricia stepped between them. What information? I asked Frank. Names, amounts, dates. I've been keeping records of everything in case things went south. Frank glanced nervously at Jeffrey. Insurance, you know. Dad, don't listen to him, Jeffrey pleaded. These people are dangerous. More dangerous than what you were planning to do to me? I asked quietly. The question hung in the air between us, unanswerable. Before we could continue, Jeffrey's phone rang again. Patricia answered once more, putting it on speaker. They broke in, Amanda sobbed. They're tearing the place apart. They say they're coming for you next, Jeffrey. I told them you were getting the money tonight. In the background, we could hear angry male voices and the sound of breaking glass. Warren immediately called the police again to update them on the escalating situation. Jeffrey paced frantically, pulling at his hair. I'm dead, he kept repeating. They're going to kill me. I made a decision then, not out of love or forgiveness, but out of a father's instinct to protect his child, no matter how deeply that child had hurt him. Warren, what would it take to secure an emergency loan against my house? Warren looked startled. Frederick, you can't be serious. I'm not letting my son be killed, no matter what he's done. Dad, no, Patricia protested. He tried to destroy you. Warren looked startled. Frederick, you can't be serious. Warren pulled me aside. Even if we wanted to, we couldn't get funds that quickly. Banks don't work that way. I thought for a moment. My classic car collection. 6 vehicles worth at least $80,000 each. We could sell them for cash quickly to the right buyer. Dad, stop, Jeffrey interrupted. You love those cars. And you were ready to sell my house out from under me, I reminded him. The tension was interrupted by Frank, who had been quietly texting on his phone. I might have a solution, he offered. I know someone who could front the money tonight, with the cars as collateral. Legitimate businessman, not connected to the gambling crowd. Warren looked skeptical. At midnight? What legitimate businessman operates like that? High-end car collector, Frank explained. Always looking for classics like Mr. Alderman's collection. He'd consider it a favor to have first option to buy. While Warren and I discussed this potential solution, Jeffrey slipped away toward the back of the house. Patricia noticed first. Where's Jeffrey going? A moment later, we heard his car start in the garage. He's running, Harold realized. We rushed outside just in time to see Jeffrey's sedan speeding away from the house. Damn it! I slammed my hand against the doorframe. He'll get himself killed. Or he's abandoning his girlfriend to save himself, Patricia suggested grimly. No, I shook my head. He's panicking. He thinks he's protecting us by drawing them away. Warren was already calling the police again, reporting Jeffrey's flight. Meanwhile, I tried calling his cell phone repeatedly, getting no answer. As we stood in the driveway debating our next move, Amanda called again, this time to my phone. They left, she reported, her voice shaky. Someone called them. They said they're going after Jeffrey directly. Where would he go? I asked the group urgently. Where does he hide when he's in trouble? Patricia and I looked at each other as the same thought struck us. Mom's grave, we said simultaneously. Since Martha's death, Jeffrey had often gone to the cemetery when upset or facing difficult decisions. It was the one place he felt connected to her. I'm going after him, I decided. I'm coming with you, Patricia insisted. Not safe, Warren protested. Let the police handle this. They don't know where to look, I countered, and they won't get there in time. As Patricia and I prepared to leave, Harold discovered something alarming in Jeffrey's abandoned jacket. A handwritten note. Frederick, Harold said gravely. This looks like a suicide note. My heart nearly stopped as I read my son's words. Dad, Patricia, I'm sorry for everything. I've made too many mistakes to fix. You're better off without me. Please take care of Amanda. Tell her I tried. I just couldn't see another way out. All my love, Jeffrey. The race to find my son suddenly took on desperate urgency. We weren't just trying to protect him from loan sharks now. We were trying to save him from himself. Patricia and I drove toward Peaceful Gardens Cemetery, located on the outskirts of town. The 20-minute drive felt endless, each second ticking away with potentially fatal consequences. I can't believe we're doing this, Patricia said quietly. After what he tried to do to you. He's still my son, I replied simply. Your brother? I know. She stared out the window, at the dark landscape. I just don't know if I can forgive him. Forgiveness isn't the issue right now, I said. Keeping him alive is. We arrived at the cemetery gates, finding them locked for the night. Without hesitation, I drove around to the service entrance, where I knew from Martha's funeral that the fence was lower and easier to climb. Patricia helped me over, my 67-year-old knees protesting the effort. Once inside, we moved quickly through the moonlit grounds toward the family plot where Martha rested. From a distance, we could make out a solitary figure sitting beside Martha's headstone. Jeffrey. As we approached cautiously, I saw something that made my blood freeze. He was holding a gun. Jeffrey, I called softly, not wanting to startle him. Son. He looked up, his face streaked with tears. Go away, Dad. Please. I don't want you to see this. See what? You giving up? I took a careful step closer. That's not what your mother would want. Mom would be ashamed of me, he choked out. Of what I've become. What I tried to do to you. Yes, she would, I acknowledged, taking another step. But she'd want you to make it right, not end it. Patricia moved slowly to my side. Jeffrey, this isn't the answer. He shook his head. You don't understand. I've ruined everything. My career, my relationship with Dad. And those men will find me eventually. We can fix this, I promised. Now close enough to see his finger on the trigger. Together. How? I tried to have you declared incompetent. I was going to steal everything from you. What kind of son does that? A desperate one, I said gently. A scared one. I was going to put you in a home against your will, he confessed, his voice breaking, while I sold your house and spent your savings. I know, I acknowledged, and we'll deal with that, but not like this. I was now within arm's reach of my son, close enough to see the gun shaking in his hand. With deliberate slowness, I sat down beside him on the cool grass in front of Martha's grave. Your mother once told me that the measure of a person isn't their worst mistake, I said quietly. It's what they do after. Jeffrey's shoulders shook with silent sobs. I've made too many mistakes. So, start fixing them. Right now. Give me the gun, son. Our eyes met in the moonlight. For a moment, I saw the little boy who used to run to me when he was scared, who believed his dad could fix anything. Then, slowly, he placed the gun in my outstretched hand. As I secured the weapon, Patricia called Warren and the police, giving them our location and reporting that the immediate crisis was averted. Jeffrey slumped against his mother's headstone, emotionally spent. What happens now? He asked hollowly. First, we deal with the people threatening you, I said firmly. Then we address what you tried to do to me. Neither will be easy, but both are necessary. As we sat in the quiet cemetery waiting for help to arrive, I placed my hand on Martha's headstone, drawing strength from her memory. We're going to get through this, I promised, speaking both to my deceased wife and my broken son, as a family. For the first time in months, perhaps years, Jeffrey's eyes held something I recognized from his childhood: trust in his father. 3 months later, I sat in the back row of a community center meeting room, watching Jeffrey receive his 90-day sobriety chip from his Gamblers Anonymous sponsor. His hands trembled slightly as he accepted the small token, but his voice was clear and strong as he shared his journey with the group. My addiction nearly cost me everything, he admitted to the circle of supportive faces. My relationship with my father, my freedom, possibly even my life. I betrayed the person who has always been there for me, all for another chance at the tables. The path to this moment had been neither straight nor easy. The night at the cemetery had been just the beginning. 3 months later, I sat in the back row of a community center meeting room, watching Jeffrey receive his 90-day sobriety chip from his Gamblers Anonymous sponsor. His hands trembled slightly as he accepted the small token, but his voice was clear and strong as he shared his journey with the group. My addiction nearly cost me everything, he admitted to the circle of supportive faces. My relationship with my father, my freedom, possibly even my life. I betrayed the person who has always been there for me, all for another chance at the tables. Instead, with Warren's guidance, we pursued a different approach. Jeffrey entered an intensive gambling addiction program. He agreed to substantial community service, financial restitution, and strict oversight. Most importantly, he took full responsibility for his actions, never attempting to minimize or excuse what he had done. Patricia had struggled more than I expected to reconcile with her brother. "You were going to throw our father away," she had told him, during one heated family session. "For money." "I don't know if I can ever forget that." Jeffrey had nodded, accepting her anger without defense. "I wouldn't blame you if you never forgave me," he'd responded. "What I did was unforgivable, but I'm trying to become someone better than that person." Slowly, tentatively, our family began to heal, not by forgetting what had happened, but by facing it honestly. Jeffrey attended therapy twice weekly, working through the gambling addiction that had driven him to such desperate measures. I joined him for family sessions once a month, examining our relationship and my own role in our family dynamics. I had established a trust with professional oversight to manage Jeffrey's financial recovery. His debts were being paid systematically, and he had secured a new job at a small accounting firm owned by a recovery program graduate who believed in second chances. The position came with built-in accountability and reduced stress compared to his previous high-pressure roles. Amanda, who had shown remarkable loyalty during the crisis, was now helping Jeffrey manage his daily finances using a strict budget system. Their relationship had deepened through the ordeal, her steadfast support providing a foundation for his recovery. "I want to especially thank my father," Jeffrey continued in his share, his voice catching. "When he had every reason to turn his back on me, he showed me what true strength looks like. Not by excusing what I did, but by holding me accountable while still offering me a chance to make amends." From my seat, I nodded encouragement, feeling a complex mixture of emotions. The pain of betrayal hadn't disappeared entirely. Trust was being rebuilt slowly, brick by careful brick. But watching my son take responsibility for his actions and commit to genuine change filled me with cautious hope. 6 months after that fateful night, our family gathered for dinner at my home. Not just Jeffrey and Amanda, but Patricia, who had flown in from Seattle, Harold and his wife Susan, and Warren, who had become more friend than attorney through our ordeal. The atmosphere was relaxed yet meaningful as I raised my glass of sparkling cider, accommodating Jeffrey's sobriety. To new beginnings, I offered simply. As conversations and laughter flowed around my dining room table, I found myself reflecting on the journey we had traveled. The betrayal had been real and devastating, the consequences serious and necessary. But through it all, something unexpected had emerged, a more authentic relationship with my son, based not on idealized versions of each other, but on seeing and accepting our true selves, flaws, and all. After dinner, I announced a decision I'd been contemplating for months. "I've established a foundation," I told the gathered family. "The Alderman Family Trust for Gambling Addiction Recovery. It will provide resources for treatment programs and support for families affected by gambling addiction." Jeffrey looked stunned. "Dad, I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything. This isn't just about you. Through this experience, I've learned how many families are torn apart by addiction. How many people need the kind of second chance you're working so hard to honor." Patricia, who had gradually softened toward her brother as she witnessed his genuine efforts at redemption, added, "I'll be serving on the board of directors from Seattle." The foundation represented something important to me, transforming our family trauma into something that might help others avoid similar pain. The next morning, Jeffrey and I drove to Lake Henderson, fishing rods stowed in the trunk. We hadn't been fishing together since he was a teenager. The familiar ritual of preparing tackle and baiting hooks provided a comfortable backdrop for conversation. "I keep asking myself why," I admitted as we cast our lines into the still water. "Why you felt you couldn't just come to me about the gambling debts." Jeffrey was quiet for a long moment. Pride at first, then shame, then fear. Each lie required another to maintain it, until I couldn't see a way back to the truth. He adjusted his grip on the rod. "But mostly, I think I was angry." "Angry? At me?" "At life. At myself. At Mom. For dying." He shook his head. "I blamed you for cutting me off financially 2 years ago, but you were right to do it. I just couldn't admit that my failures were my own." We fished in contemplative silence for a while, the rhythmic casting and reeling, creating a meditative space for reflection. "I'm still angry sometimes," I confessed, "when I remember how close I came to losing everything." "You have every right to be. But I'm choosing to build something new, instead of dwelling on what almost happened." I turned to look at my son directly. "The question is, what are you choosing to build?" "A life with integrity," he answered without hesitation. one day at a time. As the morning sun warmed the lake's surface, a photographer I'd hired arrived to capture a family photo. Jeffrey looked surprised as Patricia joined us, having arranged her flight to include this morning. For the foundation website, I explained, as we posed by the lakeside, fishing rods in hand. The photographer directed us to move closer together, to smile naturally. As Jeffrey and Patricia stood on either side of me, their arms lightly touching mine, I felt the weight of our shared history and the promise of our future. Life doesn't always follow the path we expect. Relationships can be broken in ways that seem irreparable. Trust, once shattered, leaves sharp edges that cut when we try to piece it back together. But I've learned that true family bonds aren't defined by perfect behavior or unwavering loyalty. They're defined by the willingness to face hard truths together, by the courage to begin again after devastating mistakes, by establishing boundaries that protect while still leaving room for growth and redemption. My son tried to take everything from me. Yet in that attempt, he inadvertently gave me something precious, a chance to practice the kind of love that doesn't depend on worthiness but insists on accountability. A love that acknowledges reality rather than hiding in comfortable illusions. As our family photo was taken, capturing 3 imperfect people connected by blood and shared experience, I understood that this was perhaps my most important legacy. Not the money Jeffrey had coveted or the house he had planned to sell, but the example of how to face betrayal with strength and create healing without denying the wounds. Have you ever experienced betrayal from someone you trusted completely? How did you balance accountability with compassion? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Please like this video if my story resonated with you, subscribe to hear more real-life experiences, and share with anyone who might be struggling with family betrayal or addiction. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you wisdom and strength on your own journey through life's unexpected challenges.